Hello and welcome to my Meet the Author video. My name is Colin Bramwell and I'm here to talk to you about Fower Pessoas, my latest book, which is coming out with Carcanet on February the 27th. I'm very excited for it indeed. Excited to tell you about it as well. I'll probably introduce myself before we get going. I am from the north of Scotland. I grew up in a village called Fortrose on the Black Isle, which is just north of Inverness. So I do consider myself a northerner, although I have been living in Edinburgh for quite a long time, since I was about 18 years old. And I was also born in Ayrshire, so I'm really from all over. Uh, Poetry is my main output, I suppose, for writing. Output seems like a strangely clinical word to use, but that's what I tend to write. Yes, I have original poems published in magazines, etc. And my next poetry book will be an original collection of poems. Otherwise, though, I'm very interested in translating. When I'm not working on things closer to home, which we'll be going into in a second, I translate in partnership work from Taiwan. So my most recent book, which is called Decapitated Poetry, a book of translations from the controversial queer poet Ko Wah-chin, just won the Lucian Strike Translation Prize at the American Literary Translators Association. And my other work has been shortlisted for the Edwin Morgan Prize, as well as having won other things, John Dryden Translation Competition, etc. So I've always been interested in the sort of transition, at least between original work and translations, versioning. This Pessoa book does kind of sit somewhere in the axis between original work and translation, somewhere in between. It also sits in between in a kind of axis of English to Scots. I should probably say a bit about what Scots is. Scots is the third language of Scotland after Gaelic and English. Scots is very like English. It's 98% similar to English. It has been estimated as being so. So for some reference, the difference between Spanish and Portuguese is about 90%. And those languages are, although not entirely mutually intelligible, depending on who you're talking to, still very close linguistically. English and Scots are extraordinarily close linguistically, and that means that you can kind of effectively position your language on a sliding scale of pure Scots to pure English. My idea was not to have a pure Scots or a pure English here, but to let the kind of languages kind of cross-contaminate and pollinate as they have in regular speech. I felt like I was trying to serve a kind of lesson to, or trying to, how would I put it? I felt that for Pessoa, there was a kind of theatrical context to translate, and that meant not just putting him into another language, but putting him into a new century. And so I paid very close attention to how I thought things would be spoken contemporarily. Also, I take further steps into the Scots Register, and so for the uninitiated readers, there is a foot of the page glossary, and this explains some of the more obscure words that I'm using. One tries to turn the reader's attention towards an idea that the Scots language exists and wants to show it off, but also you want to communicate some of the hybridity as well. And so likely this approach will please no one, but let's see if it does or not. I wrote this book over a period of about 4 years. It began its inception as a kind of aspect of a doctoral research, and then grew kind of legs or wings, depending on your preferred limb. And so I wrote it mainly in Edinburgh, with some jaunts to Lisbon, of course, and to Rome in the meantime. And so I'm very excited to see what the world makes of the book. Putting the selection together was a major difficulty. There was a lot of poems that were cut out of the original selection because the book itself grows very long, and Fernando Pessoa was a very prolific writer, although he didn't always publish all of his work. Um, let's talk about Pessoa. Pessoa wrote in sort of fictionalized characters. This was a kind of outgrowth from his childhood. He grew up for a brief time in Lisbon, in Portugal, and then moved to South Africa, where he was put through sort of English colonial public school system. An experience that I think that he found to be informative but lonely, and so Pessoa's relationship to the English language is complicated and does mirror the relationship of Scots to that language as well. But he began writing poems and various discourses, literary discourses in other characters' voices, and so this book translates four of his main, what he called his heteronyms, which is a fine term. Which has an application in real life English, which I think does respond quite well to what I'm thinking about in this book. The dictionary says a heteronym is for each of two or more words which are spelled identically but have different sounds and meanings. This does reflect a little on the relationship between Scots and English. The spelling really does make a difference there. And then also each of two or more words which are used to refer to an identical thing in different geographical areas of a speech community. Again, we've been transplanting Pessoa into Scots for this project, so I use the royal we here because it sort of does lose one's mind a little when interacting with Pessoa's fictional universe. But yes, so the poets translated from Pessoa in this book are Alberto Cairo, Álvaro de Campos, Ricardo Reis, and Fernando Pessoa himself, who, of course, he included himself among his heteronyms. Very different poets with very different ethics, but all meant to be in kind of conversation with one another. So, yes, this book does translate those four heteronyms as a kind of challenge to a language. In part, I was reading a lot of stuff about at the time about whether Scots was appropriate for certain registers of language, and so I wanted to try and prove in a way that it was appropriate for all registers by translating a very kind of heterogeneous poet. The light came on. Amazing. My favourite piece in the new collection was a piece that that got me into translating Pessoa, which is a poem called Tabacaria, a long and existential monologue on urban life and on a kind of nihilism, courting a kind of nihilism, written by the heteronym Álvaro de Campos, who I think is my favourite of the heteronyms. It takes place, a man is standing at a window looking out onto the street below. In my head, I transposed it to Gibson Street in Glasgow, and in fact, Glasgow has been my kind of stand-in for Lisbon here in the book generally. I spent a long time translating the Tabacaria. It's a very long poem, but I think still is my favourite poem in the collection. Hopefully not to a contrarian way, because it's a wee bit too long to publish or to read out in social moments or antisocial moments, as the truth may be. But so I am really delighted that the book's coming out. I'm particularly thankful to Carcanet for taking it on, and I'm excited to see what the world makes of it. My hope is that the language of the book should be different enough to be educative for English-speaking readers, but then also open enough to also be readable and accessible for those same readers. So, other than this, all that remains to say is thank you so much for listening to my Meet the Author video. My book will be available to pre-order through the Carcanet website, and we will be doing our launch of the book imminently, so keep your eyes peeled for details. If you want to follow me on social media where I'll be talking about the book, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is at Brambrella, like an umbrella but with a Bram. And yes, that's the place to go for further Pessoa related news. Um, in the meantime, I look forward to further communication. And I will be posting videos from the book, little videos of poems that we're making, and exploring a little bit the relationship between Pessoa and Scots in a kind of public, scary social media way. So I'm looking forward to telling you all about that in the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to this video. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we will see you all soon. Thank you.